So, what actually is library music? Also goes by other names, namely production music. Most of the production libraries tend to call themselves production music, so they obviously prefer it. It's also been known as stock music, although I think they stopped using that a while back because stock implied cheap, and it was bad connotations, really. Background music, it's also called, which, while true, it's not all that library music is. It can be far more than that. And sync music. So sync music, while library music is sync music is a bit of an umbrella term for synchronization to picture, audio synchronized to picture. So library music is sync, but it's not all that sync is. Often they're confused slightly, and I'll talk about that a little bit more now. So when we want to synchronize a piece of audio to picture, for example, let's say it's a TV show that we're working on and we need a piece of music for it. There are kind of three ways we can do that, or there's sort of three pillars of sync, if you like. The first pillar would be use a commercial track. So an Ed Sheeran or a Taylor Swift track, they've released music, it's out there in the wild, everyone knows it, I want to use it in my production. So I'd contact the publisher, I mean not me personally, but hypothetically if I was the BBC or something like that, I would contact the publisher, probably arrange quite a hefty license fee to use the track. That track would then be used in my production. Happy days. Pillar one, that's commercial music. Pillar two is if you don't want to use commercial music, if you want a piece of original music, you can hire a custom composer. So perhaps pay a flat fee or arrange some kind of royalty split and get a custom piece of work from hiring a producer. A great way to do it. Loads of people do it that way. Pillar two. Pillar three is where library music fits in. It's where those first two pillars don't quite fit. Maybe you don't want to use commercial music for whatever reason, or for budgetary reasons you just can't afford it. Similarly, you don't want to pay for a custom piece of work from a producer, or it's just a decision that you make. That's where library fits in. Anybody within media can go to a music library, choose a track and pay a fee. I won't go too much into detail about it because I've got a little bit on that later, but that's essentially it. There's three ways we can use music to sync. So where do you hear library music? Basically everywhere. You'd probably be surprised at how prolific library music is. It's heard in not just TV, it's heard in podcasts, radio shows, YouTube channels use library music. Movie trailers, a lot of movie trailers, believe it or not, are actually library music based. It's basically all over the place. And at this point, I thought a good idea would be to show you how a library kind of works, a bit of a use case, if you like. So kind of role play. Let's pretend that I am a TV editor. I'm working for the BBC, let's say on Top Gear. And I want a piece of music. Obviously, I'm not going to use Ed Sheeran. Let's say I don't like him, or it's just not interesting to me. I only need a 30-second piece of music, so I'm not going to choose to hire a composer. That'd be crazy. So what I would do would be to, for example, go to Universal Production Music. So this is one of the biggest libraries in the world. You can basically see all their new releases here. And one thing to note is that library music is not really done on a track-by-track basis. It's compiled into genres and themed albums. So as you can probably see here, we've got minimal tension, jet set, disco house. These are all new today. This was different yesterday. Latin comedy, hip-hop soul. So you can see the genre-specific ones there. But you can also see more sort of themed albums. So pharmaceuticals is there. Without listening to it, that's probably quite corporate heavy stuff, maybe focused on advertisement, that kind of thing. But as an editor, for example, in this case, I'm not going to fish through all these albums to try and find the track that I want. I'm going to go to this keyword search up here because I vaguely know what kind of vibe I'm after. So I want let's imagine my piece of footage is a car driving around. There's a bit of dialogue going over the top. So I just need something underneath, bubbling away, pulsing tension, I'm going to call it. So let's type in pulsing tension, go. And we get 6,862 releases. Great, that's loads. I'm going to be here all day. So let's start playing a couple. Woo! Okay, that's big, but it's far too big for what I need. So let's scroll down some more. Driving pulses, this one says. So let's play. I'll just skip to where I can see it kicks in a little bit. Okay, it's quite a cool track, but it might be a bit too horror for what I need. I need something just a little bit more subtle. So scroll down a little bit more. I've got pulse tool bed. That's exactly what I need. So let's play. Skip to where it kicks in a bit more. Sounds cool. You can imagine dialogue would easily sit over the top of that. It's a nice bit of pulsing background music. Does it do it much else? A little bit. Okay, so I like that track. Let's say I want to use it. I would log in. Generally, everyone who works as a sort of editor in media will have some sort of login for multiple production libraries. I'm logged in here. I just hit download. It will go into my local files, and I can just drag that into my edit. Easy peasy. Now, providing that the track gets registered properly, which is a whole other lecture in itself. I won't go into that. At some point down the line, the composer of this, who is Max Cameron Conkers, will receive a royalty for that usage of the track. And it's basically as simple as that. That's sort of a real top-level use case of how a library track would be used.
I just have a question there.
Go for it.
Will the composer be notified straight away, or do they just sort of see the royalties come in at the end of the month?
In my experience, the composer is rarely notified when a track is used. If it's a particularly big placement, then perhaps the publisher would let you know. But most of the time, because these editors will download hundreds of tracks at a time, and they're just not going to go to the publisher and say, I've used your track in my edit. They're just going to use it. Particularly with people like the BBC who pay a blanket license. So they pay something around £2-3 million a year to the PRS to use any production music they want from any library. So they don't even have to really mention it. They'll just drag it into the edit. Someone down the line will hopefully write down the name of the composer and the name of the track, otherwise it doesn't work. But yeah, they won't be notified. They'll see it, the composer will see it in their royalty statement. Could be 3 months later, 6 months later. It's a bit of potluck.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the fun of it.
Yeah, do you ever get surprised?
Oh shit, yeah. Yeah, oh yeah. Oh, it's fascinating, yeah. I'll show you a little bit later. There's some examples, but yeah, there's some crazy stuff that pops up, honestly, it's mad.
I've got a quick question.
Yeah, go for it.
How does like the ranking kind of system work on that? Like, how do you rank more highly? Like, how is it organised? Because obviously you're more likely to get picked if you appear in the spotlight.
It's a great question. Yeah, this is largely ranked by release date. So, for example, I did the same search yesterday, and this album didn't show up, and that's because it's a new release album. So, in case of this search, it's chronological. So there's not a lot you can do about that. But what also tends to happen is there are music curators within the libraries, call themselves music supervisors, and they sit with the catalogue daily, and they almost cherry pick the best stuff. And what can also happen is if an editor doesn't want to do this process, they don't want to search through thousands of tracks, they can just contact the music supervisor at Universal and say, look, I need a pulsing tension track 30 seconds long, can you help me? And the music supervisor will then cherry pick a bunch of pulsing tension tracks and send them in the form of a playlist, which you can see down here. There's all kind of playlist functionality. And that kind of relies on the track being good. So if your track is better than other tracks, then it will naturally rise to the top and be chosen. Otherwise, you are in a lottery situation where it's just a new release and you're relying on a lot of scrolling. Yeah.
Also, who puts the albums together? Would you compose an album yourself and then upload it yourself, or would you go to a label and get tracks selected?
Yeah, great question. So the compiling of the albums and the artwork and all that kind of thing is done by the publisher, by the library. There's two different ways you can get your tracks on an album. You can create an album yourself. Say you've written a 10-track album, you pitch it to the library. If they accept it, wonderful. They'll then take over that process. You know, you'll deliver the mix down. You don't even have to master it. They'll master it for you. They do the artwork, all the tagging, that kind of stuff, the keyword tagging, so people know it's pulsing tension. And it's largely just taken off your hands, which is the ideal world. You know, you pitch an album, it gets accepted, wonderful. But also what happens is they have producers, in-house producers that compile ideas and themes. So the pharmaceutical album that we saw earlier, that will be someone's idea. We've got a bit of gap in the market. We want to do a pharmaceutical album. Let's find some composers who we know do that kind of music, who have done previous things in the catalogue. Does that make sense? And then they'll contact maybe 6 or 7 composers and say, can you do me 2 tracks of pharmaceutical music? They'll all get brought in to create that album. So there's 2 different ways, really. It's either compiled by the internal team, or you've pitched a full album and it's been accepted. Does that make sense? Yeah. So you don't have to worry about uploading all this. This is all taken care of, which is great because you can concentrate on the music.
We've just got a question on the stream here.
Yeah.
Is there ever times where people don't credit you properly and you miss out?
Yep. It's a pain in the arse. Yeah. A lot of the industry still uses quite an archaic system called cue sheets, whereby the TV show, the production, has to fill in a cue sheet of what music is used. And often these are horribly clunky forms, particularly because people can't be bothered doing it. They'll ask the researcher or the runner or someone quite low down the scale who just doesn't understand how important it is. They could spell your name wrong, spell the name of the track wrong, and all those kind of things are barriers to being paid a royalty. Things have improved recently with fingerprinting, things like, you know, the YouTube Content ID. PRS work with a company called Soundmouse, who do all that kind of audio tagging. So things have improved. But every now and again, I will find out my track has been used somewhere. Somehow I will find out. And then I can actually go into the cue sheet system via PRS website, look up that show and see if I'm correctly tagged. And a couple of times it's just been the name of the track's not there or my name's not there, and it's a disaster. And then you've got to spend a couple of days contacting people, and there's a lot of admin involved in that. And I think it's just the nature of the beast. Sometimes it happens. Probably I'm only paid about 70-80% of what I should be, guessing. That's what it feels like anyway. So yeah, there can be problems.